In this chapter, we're going to talk about working with titles for your show, and in this movie, I'm going to show you how to create a basic lower third to identify your speakers. So I have Kelly right here, and we need a title to identify her. So to add a basic lower third title, I'm going to park my playhead over the frame that I want the title to go, and I'm going to come up to Title, New Title, and Default Still. I'm just going to name it Kelly Lower Third. And notice that all of the properties match my sequence, so I'll say OK. So now we're in Premiere's title tool. I'm going to start by coming up here to the type tool, and I'll type her name, Kelly, and then right below that, designer. I'll grab my selection tool and just move this over here. So let's take a look at some of the things that we can do with this title. Now first, just as an aside, the frame that we see as the background is the frame that we're parked on in Premiere. It's not part of the title, it's just a reference frame. If you don't want to see the reference frame, you just click on this little eyeball here. I do want to see it because I want to make sure that the colors and everything will work with the background. So in this drop-down menu, you have a lot of font choices. So you can start from scratch, but a lot of times what I like to do is come down to title styles because these not only assign a font, but they also bring other things like strokes, shadows, colors, and so on. You can click on each one and you can see how everything looks with the text that you've selected. So I'm going to go with this one right here. Now I'm going to come back up here at the top and talk about this for a little bit. These are a couple of common parameters that you can adjust. We've got the fonts, obviously. Here's where you can bold or italicize your text and so on. We have font size right here, so you can make it larger or smaller. You can also drag the bounding box to make this larger and smaller. Notice that it will not constrain proportions unless you hold Shift, then your proportions will be constrained. Actually, what I do want to do with size here is make designer smaller. So I'll just select that and then I'll bring that down like so, and maybe reposition. Here we have our kerning, the space between letters. Here's leading, the space between lines. And then finally, justification. So if you've worked in word processing programs, all of that should be fairly familiar. Now I'm going to come over here to title properties. There are a lot of repeats from the shortcuts toolbar. You can see here my leading and kerning and so on. And I don't want to change any of this, so I am just going to twirl up transform. You can see here this is position, width, height, that sort of thing. And properties. I'll twirl both of those up because I think I'm okay with my basic characteristics. But I want to come here to fill. Right now, the fill type is set to solid and it's a light blue. I'm going to change my fill type to a linear gradient. And I'm going to change my colors here. In this left box, I'm going to go ahead and double click. And I want to kind of be in the yellow-orange family. But I'm going to do white for the left box. And for the right box, I'll double click. And we'll be right around that color, kind of a nice amber color. And I'll say OK. If you wanted, you could change the opacity of either one of these color stops. I want to keep mine at 100%. And you can also change the angle. If you take a look at the title, you can see the gradient angle moving it around. But I'm going to leave it right at about 0, so let me just undo that, Command-Z. All right, so I'm happy with my fill. I'm going to go ahead and twirl that up. And now I'm going to come down to strokes. You'll notice that this particular style, the one that we chose, does have an outer stroke applied to it. It's an edge. Notice that there are other types of strokes. I'm going to keep my outer stroke, but I'm going to change the size and the color. Again, we're kind of going away from the blue, so I'm going to click here and let's make it black. And I'm going to up the size a little bit so that the title stands out. Notice here you can also change the opacity, but I'm not going to. I'd like a solid stroke. I'm going to twirl up strokes now, and we're on to shadow. The shadow's a bit much for me. I'm going to bring that in a little bit. So I'm going to bring my size down, bring my spread down, and my distance. You can see it sort of shrink back to the letters. And I think that's good. I'm also going to play with the opacity here. All right, so 100% is too dark, but I'm going to come back maybe 65, so almost what it was at. And I'll twirl up shadow. And I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and click on the background so I get rid of my little bounding box so I can take a look at it. Now what I'm going to do is create a shape behind this title. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and just draw a shape over the whole thing like so. Notice that it's the exact same style that I just made. My white and my amber underneath. I have my stroke and my shadow. So the first thing I want to do is actually send it behind my title. So I'm going to go send to back. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually disable my outer stroke. I don't want that, and I don't want a shadow. Now I'm going to come to fill and twirl that down, and I kind of want this barely here. So I'm going to click on my first one, the white, and I'm going to bring this down to maybe 10 or 15%. And then I'm going to click on my amber color and bring that way down as well, but not quite as much, maybe between 40 and 50. Now we kind of have the hint of the shape behind it, and I like how it sort of mirrors the colors of the actual title. I do think it's a little large. I'm going to take my selection tool and bring it down a bit, like so, and I'll also bring my title down. You want to try to keep your title inside your safe title margins, so I think we're good. And we'll probably just need to make this a little bit taller. All right, so I think I'm okay with this lower third as a title for Kelly. I'm just going to close the title tool. You don't have to save anything. And you'll notice that I have it here in my project pane. I can just click and drag this over to my timeline. And I'm going to zoom in here and make sure that it's just over her. And I'm going to play.
When it comes to letterpress, I get giddy and excited.
And just a little bit longer. I like to have it on there so that you can read it through twice. So I'm just going to play one more time.
When it comes to letterpress, I get giddy and excited.
Now right now it's just popping on and popping off, so I want to add a couple of transitions here. Again, I can click on the title, and to add a dissolve to the beginning and the end, I can just press Command D or Control D on a PC. And I'm going to zoom in here and trim these up a little bit. If you consistently want shorter dissolves, remember you can always come up to Premiere Pro, Preferences, General, again under the Edit menu on a PC, and then Video Transition Default Duration, you can change that to 6 or 8 or whatever you want. And let's play this one more time.
To letterpress, I get giddy and excited.
All right, I like it. Now what you can do is just Option drag this over and over again. And I can go ahead and click on this one and double click and just change the information here. And he is a printer. And my size here didn't actually stay the same, so I'm going to just bring that back down. I'll probably need to go back into Kelly's title and get the exact measurements for that second line, but for right now, that's okay. All right, so those are the basics of creating a simple lower third title. If you're familiar with other word processing or graphics creation programs, you'll catch on really fast to the Premiere Title tool.